drivers in China are kind of oblivious, a lot like Americans, except it's kind of a lot worse, because all the crazy dashcam videos like this are from China. Like, every time. And I wouldn't just be saying this with only dashcam video, okay? Who do you think I am? Being a driver in China is significantly more dangerous than being a driver in the US. Because comparatively, in China, there's a 4-to-1 ratio of injuries versus death in traffic accidents. So in China, out of every 4 people injured, 1 died. In the US, that number is 70-1. And the US does not have good drivers globally. And on top of that, most of these drivers are brand new to driving. Like in 2009, there was 45 million cars that were privately owned in China. And those early numbers were mainly people like government officials, mega rich people, and just overall prestigious positions. It was not a lot of people. Like, keep in mind, 45 million cars in America would be a much larger ratio. In China, that ratio is nothing. And in 2020, those numbers hit 242 million. And I'm sure now it's even higher, especially after COVID. I know America had a car boom because of COVID. I would not be surprised if China did as well. But the point is, there's a lot of new drivers in China. And let's start with the obvious issue with that when it comes to safety on the road. They're all new drivers. Have you been in the car with the new driver who's not really good at driving?
Brake! What were you doing? Trying to hit the cop?
But generally speaking, people get better at things over time. But since most of the drivers are new, they're all crashing into each other. And you also have to keep in mind that since barely anyone had cars for the longest time, there's no generational knowledge here. You can't ask your dad how to drive because he doesn't know how to drive. Like, if you grew up in a country with cars, you totally take for granted the fact that you always rode in a car. If you looked out the window while you were sitting in a car at any point in your life, you were taking in information. Most people in China have not had that experience ever. And then also, since no one had a car for like the longest time, the new drivers aren't just typically young people. They're also old people. And just by the fact of aging, old people are not good at driving. Newer roads could also be an issue, or I guess new infrastructure as a whole, because China's kind of been building like, mega cities everywhere, and half of them are empty, because real estate bubble, am I right? But if you've driven in a city, you know it is much more difficult than driving in a small town or in the middle of nowhere. The fact that Wyoming has speed limits is a crime. Like, seriously, I don't know how America put this long stretch of literally nothing in the middle of nowhere, and I can't speed on it, but okay. But in China, they're building a lot of mega cities, and those mega cities have mega highways to accommodate the amount of cars. And there's a lot of cars. Driving in city environments like this is kind of challenging. A lot of people just outright refuse to drive in the city because it can be kind of stressful, especially if it's rush hour. That's terrible. I hate that. Driving in Chicago is a lot harder than driving in Omaha, Nebraska. I've done both. And Chinese megacities are huge. They are not Omaha, Nebraska. And complicated highway interchanges only increase the odds of people crashing into walls. And I'm not just saying that. If you live in a big city like Chicago, LA, Houston, wherever, you know that people literally freeze up when they have to get off off-ramps. They literally don't know where to go. And let's not act like roads are always designed well, okay? There's a highway off-ramp in Seattle that goes straight into an intersection, and people crash at it all the time. And this is partially the driver's fault because it's been there forever, but it's also just poor design. Like, generally speaking, when you're driving on a highway off an off-ramp, you have kind of a long time to slow down. It is usually not this abrupt. So there's a combination of drivers not being vigilant as well as bad road design. So I really don't think it's a stretch to say that drivers in China might have issues with complicated highway interchanges because they're basically all new to driving, and on top of that, these are already annoying and difficult to navigate. And even if you do feel really comfortable on a highway, because I do as well, there are a lot of people that just don't. And I'm sure you've been in the car with them. It's never fun. And on the topic of road designs, one of the reasons why China's roads might be so dangerous is because they're based off of like North America. Every road I see in China is massive. It is meant to accommodate a lot of cars. And Americans are starting to figure out this is not a good idea because it encourages everyone to speed. You see, when you're driving a car, you are naturally going the speed you feel comfortable at. And if you're on a massive highway that's really big, you're gonna drive faster naturally. And this is less of an issue on highways because highways don't have stoplights where people are stopped, but on big strode-like streets where traffic is moving really fast and there's also lights, having road designs like this is bad. I guarantee you, almost every time you drive on a road like this, people are probably going faster than the speed limit. And if you're the only guy going the speed limit, people don't like that. Now, I'm sure someone's seen the footage I've been showing in the video, and they've noticed a lot of pedestrians on the street, and they probably think that's why the death rate's so high. But no, it's actually not. Like, don't get me wrong, it's definitely not good or improving, it's getting worse, but it's also not that high to begin with relative to people dying in cars. Because that was also one of my first thoughts, because a lot of these cities just have people walking in the street and walking into the middle of the street. Like, that happens everywhere, of course, but there's a lot of people. But another issue with roads that make you feel comfortable, since people feel comfortable on these roads, they also feel comfortable pulling out their phone. And people in China are definitely using their phone while driving. People in China actually seem to have a WeChat addiction. And I know that WeChat is like a super useful app in China. It's used for like almost everything. But apparently in 2016, 42% of users were online literally all day. And then 15% were online for 6 hours a day. How is that one lower? And apparently about 45% of drivers admitted to using WeChat while driving. And then 76% said that it was bad. So there's some overlap in those groups. Now, it's it's important to say, this study was not the greatest. It had a small sample size, and it was students who are obviously going to text and drive more. But in Shanghai, China 2014, it was the top cause of fatal accidents, and it was by far the highest reason. Drunk driving was the lowest. And I'm sure the survey with college students is not entirely accurate, but it's probably not entirely wrong either. Like, seriously, this has to be a problem globally. Distracted driving is insanely dangerous. Please stop doing it. Now, WeChat is not the only culprit when it comes to distracted driving. People just generally use their phone and also play games with their phone. And you also have the car's infotainment system now. I couldn't tell you exactly how many, but they're definitely causing some issues. And don't get me wrong, I like having an iPad in my car. I like being able to see where I'm going on a big screen. That is a nice plus. Also with songs playing, that's also kind of cool. But that is all you should be doing with CarPlay. Nothing else. You should not be fiddling with it while you're driving. But people do still. And in America, this is a problem. But in China, this might be an even bigger issue because most of the cars there are new. They have a lot less physical buttons now. In fact, a BYD car, a Chinese brand, is basically just two iPads with a weird gear shifter. I really don't like the look of that at all, actually. But BYD is one of China's best-selling brands. So a lot of people are buying a model of this car. And they kind of all look like this inside. Now, they said, I'm not citing this as some major cause, but it definitely is not helping. And even though distracted driving seems to be a big problem, drunk driving actually is not that big of an issue. China has been steadily increasing penalties for drunk driving, and slowly over time it's been curbed down a lot. So that does not explain why this graph is still the same. And China also cracked down really hard on wearing a seatbelt in your car because for some reason every culture that gets seatbelts afterwards is like, no, I don't want that. I really don't know what it is. I've talked to people here who refuse to wear a seatbelt. I don't get it. What is wrong with you? Have you seen people launch out of a windshield? Are you stupid? But the craziest part about all my research on this is I found a paper talking about accidents in China, and they talked about why the accidents are happening. And the overall conclusion of this paper was that China has not done nearly enough research into traffic accidents, and it's a really, really big problem, and they don't know what's causing the traffic accidents. They don't know why they're happening at such a rate. And there's definitely language barrier problems here. Like, there are definitely papers I can't find talking about this that are in Chinese that I can't read because I don't speak Chinese. And like, I could use anecdotes from like Reddit or something, but that's one person. And how do I know they live in China? But I think the big reason is just a lot of little reasons. Like, their driving culture is just super new. And unlike other places that have had cars for a long time and had time to adapt to things over time, China just built a bunch of roads, built car factories, and was like, these are new cars now. That's it. Like, they really haven't had a chance to have any of the safety debates that we've had over here in the States, at least. I'm sure other places have had these debates as well. Like, there's news footage of people talking about banning drunk driving.
Any attempt to restrict drinking and driving here is viewed by some as downright undemocratic.
And they weren't happy about that then.
They're making it laws where you can't drink when you want to. You have to wear a seatbelt when you're driving.
That clip was from 1980. In China in 1980, they had about 3 million cars, and there was 1 billion people almost. That is a massive difference of where both countries were at the time. That also doesn't include debates about seatbelts, or debates on if you need a blinker or not, and yeah, you do. Please just use your blinker. Their traffic accidents and fatalities will probably just improve over time because ours used to be a lot worse. But if you enjoyed this video, please check out my video where I watched a bunch of dash cam footage from China. Here's a clip of that.
Maybe it's like a butcher.
Oh!
Is he just
Was he
carrying
carrying
bricks? Stupid fucking brickmobile. Shut down.
And if you want to watch that, click the entrance now, please. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you're new. Follow me on Twitter at spatnz1 and have a good one.